Welcome to The Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor and also a family business advisor. In this show, we will be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family businesses, this podcast is for you. Sending your child to summer camp is no small decision. Today, my guest is Howie Grossinger. Howie and his wife, Sari, own Camp Robin Hood, a family-owned camp that has been in the family for 64 years. And they took over the camp from Sari's parents. So I want to tell you a little bit more about this. They are also the co-owners of Camp Walden. And for the past 21 years, they've fostered the growth of many Robin Hood campers who've made the move from country day camps to overnight camps. So Howie has focused much of his camp leadership on developing creative activities and training the staff to the highest standards. He's a former high school teacher. He's been a camp professional for over 35 years and has been positively impacting campers and staff as the go-to guy for creating and nurturing teamwork at camps. Howie is a past president of the Ontario Camps Association. So welcome, Howie.
Thanks for having me, Tammy. It's really nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I was just on your podcast, which was lovely, and I'm so glad you came on because there's nothing more I like than a family business story. And this family business story started in 1961. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the history of this family business.
Well, I think the starting point for our story begins even before my in-laws got involved in the camp. Our camp is celebrating in 2026 our 80th anniversary.
Wow.
And for the 15 years prior to my in-laws joining Camp Robin Hood, it was a day camp that started in a midtown park in Toronto called Sherwood Park. And the owners, teachers, and social workers at the time decided Camp Robin Hood in Sherwood Park kind of made sense. And, as their program grew, they outgrew Sherwood Park and they found themselves in a park called Sportsland Park, which is it's on the border of Toronto and Vaughan currently. It's not in existence anymore. And my in-laws, who were dating at the time, were looking for summer jobs. And my father-in-law was a competitive swimmer, an Olympic international levels swimmer, and needed to train in the summer. And my mother-in-law was in nursing school and looking to get practical experience, and they applied to this camp. And it didn't take long for the owners of Camp Robin Hood, who at Sportsland Park, to recognize the quality of their leadership and their contribution. And shortly thereafter, I think my father-in-law would say, like, even after that first summer, they asked him to be a director, basically. They recognized in him, this young person in his early 20s, the qualities that I think we've all recognized that, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law have passed down to generations of campers and staff, but it took those people to see it in them. And shortly after they got on board and became owners of the camp, they made their way to where we're currently located in Markham, in a location that is just north of the 407 on 52 acres, very much a country camp experience, but we are a day camp, so kids do come in and out of our program every day through busing, and predominantly busing over the many years of camp. But now we have the growth of subdivisions in York region. We have parents that live locally and drop off their kids to camp, and they just celebrated their 65th year at camp, which is incredibly special. And we consider them to be the founders of Camp Robin Hood for all intents and purposes. It's their leadership and it's their presence and that have influenced the many decades of how our program has grown, for sure.
And then how did it transition into an overnight camp?
So that evolution took place out of my transition into the camp business out of full-time teaching. So
Mm.
for many years, and I'm speaking to you as the person who, quite frankly, Tammy, I married very well. You know, uh, you know, uh, the site manager at Camp Robin Hood in 1988, the year after I started working for my father-in-law, gave me the nickname Future Boy. I
Oh,
don't know what he saw in me. I have no idea. I was trying to keep my head down, trying to impress my girlfriend's father. I was a phys ed, I was in undergrad in phys ed at U of T and developed this passion for working with kids and sports and all these things. And my father-in-law saw something in me, I guess. Our old friend who has since passed, Wes Cooper, amongst the guys who were working in maintenance, because I helped out there, he told everybody that Howie was the future boy. And this is well before Sari and I even contemplated getting married. So
did you
it sort
meet
of,
her at the camp?
we started dating in high school.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
your
And then
father-in-law hired you to work at the camp.
and then it
Good.
took me a couple years to get the nerve, I guess, to ask him for a job. It was kind of after I realized that this phys ed path that I was going through probably would take me to teaching, and therefore I would have my summers
Mm.
available. Sari, I think from a very young age recognized that, she wanted to be in the business, although she is a trained, her degree is in occupational therapy and she worked as an occupational therapist. It just, it became very natural, almost in the footsteps of my in-laws, where you had a phys ed teacher and a nurse and a phys ed teacher and an occupational therapist. And it kind of happened over
Mhm.
time. But shortly after, I kind of broached the topic with my father-in-law, and my wife had been working full time with her dad for, since we were married, essentially. Um, I found myself at a crossroads in my in my teaching career, where I kind of said, like, would you consider, me coming in full time, kind of thing. To his credit, I think it was kind of a foregone conclusion for most people who saw the way the dynamic of the four of us worked at that point.
Mm.
But it was like asking him to marry his daughter, in a sense. I had to ask him for permission to have a conversation about that. And we recognized that Camp Robin Hood had a very special place in the community, and that we had a great young person who was working with us full time, who wanted to make camping his own kind of career path. And the three of us, me, Sari, and our business partner, Saul Berenbaum, got together, talked to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, and this dream of our day camp being a feeder to an overnight camp kind of launched. And there
Mhm.
hadn't been any model of that in Canada up until that point, and we had to kind of connect with people in the States where the day camp, overnight camp industry is very well established,
Mhm.
and started learning. And lo and behold, in 2003, an amazing overnight camp became available, and the founders found it in themselves to give us, pass on their legacy to us. And for the last 22, 23 years at this point, we've been seeing a lot of campers who start with us at 4 years old at our day camp in Markham, make their way to our overnight camp in Bancroft, Ontario, and they have lifelong connections with our
Mhm.
family and with our business partner and his family. So it's really kind of, we see these young kids through their summer experiences. And we could have a whole discussion on the value of camp, and I know that how you feel about the camp experience.
Yes, I think every child should go to camp.
And
The friendships they make, it's amazing.
yeah, and I think that my in-laws always, felt that camp was this incredible potential for a unique community. And yes, kids only came for a month or 2 weeks or 8 weeks, but there's something really special you can create when you have the right staff and they're well trained, and you create a really nurturing, wonderful culture that has its roots in good education and good community building, but also then you add all the features of what the kids don't get throughout the school year.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
really makes for what I feel is the kind of loyalty we've had. We're now, you know, coming upon our 80th anniversary of Camp Robin Hood. multiple generations of families have come through camp,
Oh,
which
I
is
can't imagine 80
incredibly,
years.
it's amazing. And
Yeah.
we're really lucky. My in-laws are still at camp 3 days a week and
Oh,
wave to the campers and say hello. And my father-in-law, who is a guru of bus transportation and well known in the industry, is still has his clipboard and is marking off the numbers of the buses coming in. And it's very special. And as we transition, as we continue on to the next generation in our family, it has to be incredibly special for our daughter Jordanna to be at camp, a thing that she has so much passion for, alongside her grandparents, which is
mhm.
really super special. And our, the service we deliver is so conducive to this culture and this community building, and I think it's been really special for us.
So the transition from your in-laws. So how did that happen?
For Sari and I, it was really just a super gradual evolution of things. I think we found our way working alongside my in-laws in the most productive, wonderful way. They were very giving of handing over responsibilities without any huge announcements or any pronouncements. I think our community recognized that Sari and I were slowly taking on more responsibilities. And in our industry, there comes a time, and I think I'm at that point now, starting to at least recognizing the value of having the deeper connections with younger leadership, with younger parents who are
Mhm.
trusting you. And my father-in-law in particular was always very comfortable with giving over that limelight,
Mhm.
let's
Mhm.
say, and those things. I think after we bought Camp Walden, shortly after those years of solidifying that arrangement with our business partner, I think we then got into more formal discussions about what this could look like for
Right.
the next several years. And that's when we
Mhm.
went into some really productive conversations about, you know, passing this along, them rightfully earning the benefits of all their hard work over some time, and learned a ton in the process for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
But we ended up dealing with that sometime around 2006 and 7, and had a pathway forward where everyone could continue to be comfortable. They still have a place at camp and feel comfortable, and they're proud to say that we're the new owners of the family business, in essence.
So does your wife have siblings?
She does. She has a sister who married an American, and they made their life down in South Florida. My early days at Camp Robin Hood, she was on staff, and she was a leader within our program. And I think, Larry, my father-in-law, recognized in Sari and I, and the way that he wanted to structure this transition, this generational ownership, leadership, in a way that gave Sari and I autonomy
Mhm.
in moving
Mhm.
forward, and that he felt that um, the the fact that my sister-in-law was never really interested in pursuing the business, but I
Mhm.
felt my in-laws are making whatever provisions they're making in other ways to allow
Right.
us to pursue our passions, and be very mindful of that they have another daughter in the mix, and where
Mhm.
she fits into the whole thing. And I feel like, yeah, there are always some bumps in the roads, and
Mhm.
communication is at the core of it. And we work through that, like I think a lot of families work through those
Mhm.
things. And I know in
Mhm.
speaking with you, part of your role is helping families do that. We I don't think when we did that there was someone like you. So Sari and I have learned a lot, and are trying to implement the lessons learned from that experience into this new transition we're going through.
Yeah, because you are parents to three children,
We are.
and one is working in the business. So we have Gen 3 in the business. And how is that sort of transition, that discussion sort of started, and sort of where are you and how are you having those conversations with the entire family?
Yeah, it is a work in progress for sure. I think it wasn't until the aftermath. I think that the first time that we ever brought all of our children who are now adult children. Our youngest is 25. And so the first time I feel we ever entertained a family business conversation was in the spring of 2020 when COVID hit and
Mm-hmm.
the entire camp industry was in serious jeopardy. I think that was the first time the five of us got together where mom and dad could really talk about sort of the potential implications of a year
Mm-hmm.
where you don't operate, or what does this mean for us as a family, etc. You know, I'm incredibly grateful that my kids were adults to have that conversation, in
Mm-hmm.
many ways, because, my business partner had, four young children, and so I think about, the good fortune that at least I had where we could enter into a real quality discussion about the
Mm-hmm.
real stuff, because Sari and I parent in a very transparent way. Camp is built on good communication. We try to emulate that in our personal life the best way we can. And so we were able to just put the cards on the table like, we don't know, but here's what it, and they all played a role in helping us in different ways. Jordanna has an incredible passion for camp operations and systems and connections to the legacy of camp. My son
Mm-hmm.
Cole, is very business minded. We tapped into some of his ideas of navigating that. Our son Cole, who was a Zane, pardon me, was a little younger than that. He kind of just was this, that he played this incredible cheerleading role as we went through, but was always had enough smarts to know how to help the family kind of navigate conversations and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
collectively, for a very short period of time, I think we were kind of all invested in. They were all invested in helping mom and dad through this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then as Cole continued to pursue his professional career in business, and Zane, who is, pursuing his passion for becoming a doctor and in medical school now, and he was in university at the time. Jordanna took her professional life as a speech language pathologist, and while doing that, kind of rolled into investing more time helping us with the day to day at camp,
Mm-hmm.
and that just spawned into this amazing kind of evolution of her involvement, and then in the last couple of years talking to everybody about what this means as Jordanna wants to put all of her eggs in this basket called the
Mm-hmm.
family
Mm-hmm.
business, and that she's truly shown her capabilities of doing that. And I think her brothers are recognizing her passion and her skills, and have been very supportive.
Well, and you think about that, you've got Zane, who could be your physician at camps. I mean, because
Oh
camps
yeah, we've
always
talked
have
about that.
doctors. Right. And if you look at Cole with his business background, that could be the expansion. So have you looked at opportunity? I know that, one of the things is when kids go off and do their own thing, we as parents tend to think, well, they're happy doing this. But have you actually had those family conversations to look at the opportunities for transitions down the road? Because I know you're not ready to retire today, but if it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, have they talked about opportunities and what
Yeah,
does that look like, sort of keeping it, or what does legacy mean to them, or what does the camp mean to them? Have you had those
yeah.
discussions?
Well, I think I can say with some confidence that they're all incredibly passionate about their grandparents' legacy.
Hmm.
They're very close with their grandparents, and I think that they all are equally invested in this thing their grandparents started that continues for sure. There's
Hmm.
no doubt about that. And they've all worked at camp, they've contributed to camp, they grew up at camp. Um,
Did
you
they go
know,
to your camp?
they did. They grew up at the day camp, and then when we had the overnight camp, I can confidently say the boys gravitated towards the whole overnight camp vibe in a different way than Jordana, although she went through that whole process. But when it came time to working at camp, I
Hmm.
think the day camp was more where she found her connection, and I
Hmm.
think that's in many ways the root of her passion for our family business and the industry. But the boys are very connected to the overnight camp and the friends they've made there, in particular. But they all bring, you know, we see in them the benefits of growing up in a family that operates a camp. There's no doubt.
Mm.
I mean, from a very young age, they all had a lot of different babysitters,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They went from everybody. As mom and dad were working, they all got very comfortable with people. We're proud that they're incredibly comfortable and confident in social situations. We can see, as much as people will say it's a compliment to Sari and I and our leadership style, I think, camp kids who grow up with parents who operate businesses in our industry, it is almost by osmosis that they develop into, the kind of people that they do. So for that, we're very grateful. I think that in the future, I think Jordanna is incredibly aware of her brother's strengths and what they potentially could bring to conversations. I'd like to think that, as much as she wants to bounce ideas off in the future from mom and dad, I'd like to think that she would do the same with her brothers, knowing their strengths and where they could lend some insight or advice. And those are
Well, and we've
things that,
talked about this, right? We've talked
yeah,
about the three circles and the fact that Jordanna would have a role in the camp that pays an income, that's a job,
right.
but that the ownership can still be held by the family and not be working in day-to-day operations. So, and that's one of the things I think is great because as an owner, then she can tap into her brothers, tap into you, tap into her grandparents, if they're still around, and asking those questions and leadership and direction, right? Which is always nice.
Yeah, and I think that part of the chapter is still to be written for us as we navigate what that might look like.
Hmm.
But at the very least, I think that, we feel we're very lucky that all three of our kids, love camp so much that if asked and if, given the opportunity, they would lend a hand or lend some assistance where needed for sure.
So, how is it then that with five people in the family working actively in the business now? I mean, your in-laws may not be there every day, but they're actively still involved. How do you divide responsibilities and make decisions?
Yeah, I think just in recent years, I think that, I think the decision makings for the business have kind of officially been passed on to Sari and I from the first generation. There's no doubt about
Mhm.
that. But I still feel, having been in Sari's family for as long as I have, I'm fortunate to have, my own parents with me and they provide me with incredible advice on all parts of my life still. When it comes to camp, it's always comforting to grab my father-in-law's ear about a decision that I'm about to make with Sari
Mhm.
and Jordanna, about a new enhancement, a new direction we may want to go with either program or facility. And I know that he appreciates being brought into the loop, and I think that's a really nice feature of our continued business relationship. As far as kind of the dividing the responsibilities, I think we've worked hard in the last few years now that Jordanna is all in on camp,
Mm.
of the three of us taking a really close look at, where we're all at, what are our strengths, how do we position Jordana to be seen in a way by our community. Our community is our campers, our parents, our vendors we work with, the 45 bus drivers that come to camp every day. And I want them to know my daughter as well as they know me and Sari,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
think that with the help of, we have in the camp world, we have someone who is playing a kind of role that I know that you do for families because he knows the camp industry, who's really helped us look at our relationship, the way the three of us, the dynamic of being dad boss and mom boss, and and the lines are, it's hard, right? You talk to families all the time, I'm sure, about where's the line.
Mhm.
I think it's a daily project for us. And I think that every year it gets better. Sari's skills are incredibly focused on, customer service and parents and campers, and she's an encyclopedia on all things our clientele. I've been very lucky with Sari's encouragement because I don't think I would have done this without this opportunity through getting to know her family the way that I did many years ago, is to be in some ways the face of, the personality of camp,
The
being out
go-to
there.
guy?
The go-to guy, entertainment,
Hmm.
a lot of the fun, a lot of the out front stuff. Sari will
Hmm.
often say, Howie's the guy that's outside the office. I'm the person inside the office.
Right.
And I think the challenge that I think, slowly overcoming is recognizing, how does Jordanna come into a business where she sees her parents dividing and conquering this operation,
Hmm.
and she's only one person,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And she's had the model of the previous generations being a couple. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that's tough. And
Hmm.
there's pressure associated with that. And she doesn't have a partner who's in the business or anything like that. So the fact is that we're trying to carve out what we're recognizing and she has a passion for, and she's bringing to the table incredible innovation, incredible ways of enhancing the staff and camper experience, and a real connection to what we call first time families, so that she has an opportunity to make those first connections with families who are joining us for the first time, because over the next 5 to 10 years they're going to grow up with Jordanna as their recognized camp
Right.
director. Howie and
Right.
Sari are going to be here and they're going to see me doing my thing. And yes, Jordanna still wants, her mom to navigate tough conversations about grouping kids and things of that kind, and all the
Hmm.
things that are on Sari's plate. But I don't think she ever wants to do either of our jobs solely.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we're in this really cool place where we get to kind of be creative and play to strengths. And every year, Jordan, we talk quite intentionally about, so we did this, what do we build on, what do we want to give
Hmm.
away,
Hmm.
who are we bringing on, and we're adding full-time staff to be that person for Jordanna, that
You're right.
she so we're trying to support the entire operation to keep this going in the best possible way.
Right. And now you're running two camps, so there's a lot more. So
Mhm.
we've talked about succession in terms of ownership, but have you planned the succession in terms of roles? And like you said, there's two of you going down to one. So do you each have a successor sort of within the business who could step in and help whoever's going to be leading the next generation, whether, your boys decide to come in or not?
Yeah. The likelihood is it's going to be building a team from outside the family around Jordana in all likelihood.
Mhm.
And she has, with the leadership that she's taking in the industry in Ontario, I think she's been able to recognize, you know, the kind of person that she would like to have by her side to work, with her. And I think that we're very lucky that we have an incredible, loyal, seasonal leadership team of adults and who happen to grow up at camp. Are Many of them met their partners at camp and
Mhm.
have kids
Mhm.
that come to camp, and they still are, they're teachers who still want to be with us. This is a core group of people that I know Jordanna leans on when
Mhm.
camp is on. And now it's just a matter of, as Sari and I, you know, get to a stage in our life where we kind of want to work smarter, not harder, kind of
Yeah.
thing, that we're recognizing how Jordanna can support. And one of the things that we're going to do is, and one of the things that my father-in-law passed on right away to me is, like, the owner of a camp, this was his philosophy, should hire all the staff, right? The people, the counselors that work for you or work for your family should know the owner of the camp. And that was his philosophy and he kind of insisted that if I was to come on, that I would take that on. And and for us as a camp, it's worked out amazingly. And so
Mhm.
we're at a point where I continue to love to pitch the idea of working at camp to teenage high schoolers and university students. But we're now starting this phase where Jordan is going to be probably more connected through the interview onboarding process with
Right.
new people.
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
still going to maintain the connections with, but we still have a very, we have
The old people?
the old people or the
Yeah.
returning staff,
Right.
those
Right.
returning staff already have a relationship with Jordanna. I get to maintain that relationship through conversations with them. And so we're sharing some of those responsibilities with the
That's good.
goal.
It's
So
nice to have a long runway, right? To be able to to, teach and mentor and, be able to ask questions and share your knowledge and experience. And that's the longer the runway, the better it is for the business,
Yeah.
for the family, for the decisions.
I
Yeah.
think so, and I think that that served us well with my in-laws, and I think that Sari and I still have a lot of energy and a passion for this,
Hmm.
and just the very nature of what we do, and the lifestyle that we've been fortunate to have in this business. I don't think Jordanna's looking for us to leave because
Yeah.
I think that support is so, and she said it, and we've heard it from my in-laws. My in-laws have been incredibly complimentary about, we've taken what they built to a new level, and we
Hmm.
have no doubt that this next generation and Jordanna and the team she builds will do the same because
Absolutely.
kids have changed, parents have changed. We had a global pandemic, we're navigating so many different issues, and so therefore, you need that energy, you need that lens
Hmm.
from a younger generation. And it'll be cool. We went through a phase where our friends' kids came to camp, and now Jordanna's going to go through a phase where her friends'
Her
kids
friends'
are going
kids.
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's
it's
when you
kind of
start
cool.
feeling old.
Yes, exactly.
So I like to end every podcast with three pieces of advice. So I would like your three pieces of advice you'd like to give to other family run organizations trying to sort of build sustainability across generations. What would your three pieces of advice be?
Well, I think first of all, for me, is slow and steady wins the race. I think that um, we've been fortunate enough to, based on all the experiences and what we've seen in the industry, to like start this early enough that we have as you said, a really great runway. So,
Mhm.
and the second piece of advice is not to be shy to bring in professionals. They're not going to tell you what to do, but they are going to be able to, if you trust them and you develop a good relationship with them, be able to make you think about things that, and maybe exercise certain ways of doing things that instinctively you wouldn't, but would probably end up serving you the best.
Mhm.
And so, and that leads me to the last one, which I think for me and Sari is a constant commitment, is just the consistent communication with everybody involved. We've had moments where we've been really good at it, and I think we've had moments where we've faltered and kind of dusted ourselves off and tried to pick ourselves up and move on. And I think that's par for the course. But
Mm.
you know, sometimes that what you think are the toughest conversations don't end up being the toughest conversations. Is
No.
is is my experience thus far?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's really just have those conversations, period, right? I mean, that's
Period.
that's the key thing. So listen, where would they find Camp Robin Hood? And then where
So
would they find Camp
yes,
Walden?
so easy. Campwalden.ca for our overnight camp, and you can learn more about us. And camprobinhood.ca is our website, and you can find us on all social media platforms, particularly Instagram, which I think gives listeners a good sense of what we do and how we do it. And it's always nice to connect with people who are in a similar situation, regardless of the industry. I think there's lots of
Mhm.
learning that can take place, from people in any industry for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Tammy. Great time here, and I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Great. Thank you. If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find Blue Roots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.